Hi there, this is Tracy Kiernan from stepbysteppainting.net, and today I have this floral wreath painting to show you, and I did this on an 11 by 14 inch canvas with acrylics. I am going to go ahead and get started. For this gray background, I used a 3/4 inch flat wash brush and the colors titanium white and neutral gray value 5, which is just a long word for the color like a medium gray. If you don't have gray, you could use black and mix black and white to make kind of a medium gray color. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill the entire background with this gray and white combination. I'm going to paint all up and down strokes using the full width of my brush. And when I apply the paint to the canvas, I'm going to allow it to not mix all the way. So it's going to give you that pretty gray, sort of streaky look with the white and gray blending together. I do this with a lot of my backgrounds. It's just a really easy technique to do to fill up a white canvas and not make it look so intimidating. Just filling it up with a pretty color combination of the two colors makes it kind of look like a faux gray wood background. So I know this is speeding up just a bit. Here are some tips for you if you are having a hard time getting your paint to really flow. Add a little bit of water to your brush, and just that little bit of water will help the paint to flow a little bit better. Try to add just only a little bit on your brush. It's a very thin layer. It's not thick, so we're not slapping on the paint. We're really just kind of trying to fill up the canvas all the way. And another thing is you can adjust how light or dark you want this to look. So right here, I'm purposely adding these sort of darker gray streaks in there without the white. It's kind of giving it that pretty sort of rustic look. Just adding those streaks of gray on the top and the bottom and a little bit in the middle will give it that extra touch. So there's a couple tips for you. And when you are done with the background, it should dry really fast because the paint is applied very thin and it should dry fast. So you can get a hair dryer and help it dry, or you can take a break. But you got to let it dry before going on to the next step. This next step, we're going to be tracing a paper plate. This is your average 9-inch. I don't know if they're all standard size, but this is a 9-inch paper plate, and I'm basically just setting it on the canvas and tracing it with a pencil. When I do my wreath paintings, I find it so much easier just to trace a circle first, and then you can add your greenery and flowers all along the circle, and you won't see your pencil drawing in the end. And even if you do see some pencil in the end, you can always erase it. I am loading my palette with Cadmium Orange Hue and medium Magenta. I'm also going to put a little bit of burnt umber on the palette, and that burnt umber is going to help create that sort of darker mauve looking color later on. I'm using a number 4 round brush for this, and on my palette, I'm going to mix about a little bit of white and pink together, probably about 3 parts pink, 2 parts white. Doesn't have to be exact. And I'm going to paint the base of my rose here in the 5 o'clock position. So when I do these roses, I'm pressing down on my brush, kind of using the full bristles when I brush down, and I'm starting in the middle of the flower, and I'm painting these sort of curves or like C strokes, and I'm forming my rosebud. And right now it's really all the same color, so it just kind of looks like the same shape. In a sense, you can just paint a circle and achieve the same effect, but I did it this way. And then go ahead and load some white onto the tip of your brush and start in the middle of your rose. You can see me kind of twisting it on the palette. That helps to kind of get the paint right there on the tip of the brush. But right here in the middle, I'm going to do the exact same thing I did with the pink, only I'm going to have that white blend with the pink because that pink is still wet. So I'm doing that same thing. I'm making these little curves, starting them in the middle, and the curves are kind of staggered, almost like bricks, and they're forming that rose shape because I'm painting the curves and it's going outwards. So this is kind of a modified comma stroke, if you will. A comma stroke is you're pressing kind of hard at first, giving the brush a lot of pressure, and then sort of letting go of the brush. And you're using the full bristles of the brush to paint that. And this video was actually put in slow motion for you, but the motion that I make is a lot faster. It's a quick stroke, and it takes quite a bit of practice, and then once you get the hang of it, it gets really simple. But I'm going to go ahead and do an orange rose, and I'm going to do the same thing. So I have some orange on my palette. I didn't rinse my brush, so there's still the pink and white and orange on my brush, and you're going to see me use all different sorts of different variations of these colors, and that's okay, because your color mixing might be a little different from mine, and that's fine. So I'm going to do the same thing again with this orange rose. So start in the middle. And this video is going at the same speed that I'm doing it here, but you're doing that comma stroke where you're just making that C sort of shape, and you're forming the shape of your rose, and it's all one color right now. And then go ahead and grab some white on the tip of your brush and brush it out a little bit. It helps it to blend a little bit so it's not pure white. It turns into kind of a very light coral color. And do the same thing. Start in the middle with your little C stroke. Form the rose outwards. The stroke does go very fast. That fast sort of motion helps to get it to blend a little bit better. And right there, if your stroke looks super white, like, oh, I didn't want it to be that bright, you can always grab some more orange on your brush and then go over your stroke again. So from here, I'm going to continue on and paint another rose. And I mentioned that I'll be doing all sorts of different variations on my palette. So I decided to mix a little bit more white in there. And this is going to be a light orange rose. And that's what I'm doing here. So I'm doing the exact same technique, only we're in this part of the circle. And you can definitely copy my colors for sure, but if you wanted to kind of experiment and mix some different colors, or maybe do all pink roses, that's up to you. And I'm going to go ahead and do the white again. So add the white on your brush, kind of brush it out on your palette a little bit, start in the middle. And once you get the hang of this technique, it goes super fast and smoothly. But if you are watching this video before actually painting it, my recommendation is that you practice these roses on like a mixed media pad, so you feel really confident about it. I have a blog post that is focused on this very technique of these simple loose rose painting, so I can link that to you in this video. If you're watching on the website, there is a link on the blog post, so you can go there and it'll guide you through more detailed how I do these kind of roses. But it makes it really fun, super easy, loose style roses, so they don't look like realistic roses, but they still look like roses, and they're super fun and easy. So I'm just going to continue on painting a few roses. I like the look of this one where it overlaps it slightly. So I have the pink and orange, and then so I'm going to get some kind of creative next. And I'm going to completely rinse my brush off, get all that color off. And I'm going to make a sort of maroon or mauve looking color on my palette. And that's what that burnt umber is for. So I'm going to mix burnt umber into that medium magenta until it gets kind of really dark, and it makes this really pretty sort of maroon color. And I'm going to make the base of this rose that color. So add that brown gradually in there until you achieve the color that you want, and go ahead and make the base of it. And this rose is in the, I guess, 7 o'clock position, 8 o'clock position. And doing the same exact technique with the comma stroke. And then you would go in and add white to the tip of your brush. Brush it out on your palette a little bit so it's kind of blended in. Mixing the white in there actually makes a really pretty color. I might use that color for a future painting, but I like that color right there with the white. And then I'm going to make this just a little bit lighter so it shows up. So do the strokes, and they form outwards. And then we have our pretty dark color rosette. And I'm going to go back in here with a little bit of dark, and I'm actually going to do a few strokes of dark in there just to kind of make that middle part a tad darker. And so you can do that. You can kind of experiment and go back with more strokes, or you can just leave it with the one. It's up to you. And so I'm going to have some fun here and do the brown with the orange, and I guess there's a little bit of pink in there still, and a little bit of white, and it makes a really pretty orange color, sort of a fall color rose. This would be good for a fall painting if you wanted to do floral in that color. And so I'm doing the same thing with the white, and I know it's going a little bit faster, but it really is the same technique repeated, but with different colors. Next, I am going to paint some little white flowers, and so this skipped me doing this, but I rinsed my brush off and grabbed some titanium white. I'm still using that number 4 round brush, and I'm going to make these little tiny, well, I guess they're not tiny, smaller than the roses, small flowers that have 5 petals. Super easy. Just paint a basic 5-petal flower right there. Make sure that it's on the circle that you drew with the plate. And I'm going to make another one, maybe slightly smaller than the other one, and this one is right next to it. And then I'm going to do another 2 white 5-petal flowers over here on this side. And a few over here on the bottom. So the fun thing about doing wreath paintings is that you can sort of kind of go your own direction with this and paint different flowers in different areas. You don't have to put your flowers in the same location that I am putting them in. In the middle of the white flowers, I did a burnt umber dot. So just the tip of my brush, adding that brown right there on the tip and painting a dot right there in the middle. Next, we're going to do some of the greenery in this wreath. And I have this light olive green, and I'm also going to use deep green permanent. So 2 different kinds of greens for these leaves. And I am going to still be using that number 4 round brush. Actually, no, I lied. I'm going to be using a number 0 round brush. So it's a smaller brush because we're going to do some smaller details in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix that magenta with the deep green permanent, and mixing that pink color with the green is going to give it a sort of a more natural look. You don't have to do that if you don't want to, if you don't feel comfortable mixing pink and the green together. You don't have to, but that's just something that I decided to do. And with that 0 round brush, I'm going to paint the stem of this leaf that is going to be along this circle here. I also added a little bit of water to my brush and added it to that green mixture. It gets the flow to kind of be nice and smooth at first. Don't do a lot of water because it'll drip everywhere, especially with these little tiny brushes. But just a little bit to get that flow going, because we're going to be painting a very thin stem right here. So we have that circle that we drew, but the stem is going to go it's going to kind of cross it a little bit. So there is the stem of this leaf, and it is going to end up being a little bit longer than this right here. I'm going to make it just slightly longer. So I guess it's kind of thick at first and goes a little bit thinner. Then I'm going to do the leaf, and for the leaf I'm actually going to grab a little bit of that light olive green, kind of mix whatever was left on my brush there in there, and this is just a basic leaf. So start in the middle for your middle sort of line, and then form the shape of the leaf to create that shape. And I like to go back in there and add a little bit of that darker green in there to give it some color variation. So I'm kind of doing the same thing with these greens that I did with the roses, kind of grabbing different combinations of the dark green, the light green, even a little bit of pink if you want to, and painting the leaves and letting the colors just kind of mix and do their things when you're doing the colors of the leaves, so they're not all one solid color. And I'm just painting different leaves. There is one at the tip, and there's going to be one on this side and one on the other side, and they all have kind of different variations of that green. And then I'm going to do another leaf sort of stem thing going on, and this one's going to go along this part of the circle, so starting out kind of thick and stroking down, and then doing the leaves. Now if you look at my finished version right there of my wreath, you'll see that there's also a rose there, and I ended up painting that rose later on. So what you're seeing now is the sort of leaf structure that's underneath that rose, because I decided later on in the painting that there needed to be another rose there. Otherwise I would have done the rose in the beginning, but that's what I decided. And so I'm just kind of doing the same exact thing with the different variations of that deep green permanent and that light olive green, making the leaf shape and having it kind of go in different directions. The nice thing about using this number 0 round brush is you really have control over the shape of your leaf. You can make it nice and pointed. You can get in there and do some highlighting if you wanted to. You can even go in there and do details with the lines. Lots of detail work with this little tiny brush. And so I'm done with that set of leaves, and I'm going to do the exact same thing over here, and this one is actually going to go underneath those white flowers because I did not want to overlap them at all. They were way too pretty to overlap. So I'm going to make that leaf sort of structure, but it's going to go behind the flowers. And so for the leaves on the roses, wanted them to be a different shade of green. So I actually grabbed a lot more of that pink and mixed it into that deep green permanent, and there's also a little bit of light olive green in there and different shapes. So this is a larger leaf, and so just a basic leaf shape. I didn't go in there and add the little sort of pointed edges that the rose leaves have. That's just going to have a smooth edge. And if you accidentally overlap your petals, you can always go back and paint that petal again. So don't worry about that. And this rose leaf is going to go the opposite direction. If you wanted to, you can switch back to that number 4 round brush because it's kind of a big area for this little brush to fill in, but I used that 0 brush for the rose leaves as well. And then I'm going to do rose leaves on that darker sort of maroon color rose that I painted. And so sometimes it's kind of tricky trying to figure out what direction you want your leaves to go in. Is it going to look good if the rose leaf goes in the middle or on the edge? So you're going to have to kind of make that decision for yourself and visualize what that would look like. And I'm going to do 2 leaves here, and possibly one, I'm going to do one a different color than the other one so it stands out. So there's my other leaf. It's going to slightly overlap it It's going to be slightly lighter with some more light olive green in there. And then again, if you accidentally paint over some of your petals, you can always go back and repaint your petals again. That is what I'm going to do right here. So I'm going to get back to that number 4 round brush, mix up a sort of close color, whatever that color was, and go over my petals again because it got overlapped. Okay, so we have some little berry branches in this wreath. I love doing little spurts of berries in wreath paintings, and so this is just a basic sort of twig branch thing. This is the 0 round brush in burnt umber, so I'm doing a branch that has several little pieces sticking out. So super simple. And then let's do another one over here. This one's going to go kind of upwards. Again, sometimes it's kind of, you got to make the decision about what direction you want your element to be going. And then for the little berries, I mixed about 50-50 of the pink and the brown and freshening up my pink right there. So about 50-50 of pink and brown. It'll make that pretty sort of dark color. And so a circle on the tip of each of those branches. This is still that number 0 round brush. And so there is a circle on the tips of all those branches, and later on I do a little white highlight on all those circles, but we'll wait till those dry. And then I am going to go in and do some detail work just in the rose leaves, not the other leaves, just the rose ones. And I'm going to do light olive green with a little bit of white, and I'm just going to use the tip of my brush to paint the lines on the leaf, so kind of a line in the middle and lines kind of going outwards. Just doing that on the rose leaves. You can do it on the other leaves, but I found that it would be way too busy to have all those lines and detail work on the smaller leaves. And you can even skip the lines for the rose leaves, but I thought it added just that extra little interest in there. And right there, I wanted that to stand out a little bit more, so I made that green kind of go on the side and use my finger to smear it to kind of blend it so that it kind of pops against that other leaf. For this next step, I'm going to do a different kind of leaf. These ones are going to have a stem in the middle, but they're going to be more rounded, and I'm going to do them mostly with the color Deep Green Permanent. In fact, I think this is just all deep green permanent. There might still be some other residual greens on my brush, but it's a different green, so it stands out, and each little leaf is rounded, and it's kind of going behind those white flowers, and it's kind of sticking out in the middle here, and going in different directions. And so when you're doing these wreath paintings, I mentioned you can kind of decide what direction your piece is going, or definitely you could just copy my piece. And I'm going to do one over here, and that's okay that it's overlapping some of the other leaves. A lot of your things in this painting are overlapping each other. And then I mentioned I was going to do a little highlight after those berries dried. This is white with no green left on my brush. I rinsed it off. So just titanium white, painting a little tiny highlight on the side of all the berries. And here is where I decided that there needs to be another rose in this painting. So I am mixing a very light pink color here. I'm going to kind of do the opposite. I'm going to do light first and then dark for the highlight part, or not the highlight part, the low light part. But this is that white and pink, a very, very light pink color, and I'm going to have it overlap these leaves. Of course, that green needs to be dry if you're going to do this, so that green doesn't mix. That green is nice and dry below. I'm going to form the base of my rose shape, and then I'm going to use some medium magenta in the middle of this rose to create that the darker color, because if I did light, it wouldn't really stand out. So there's pink on the tip of my brush, and it's the same technique, and creates sort of the same effect. So start in the middle, form your petals going outwards. I thought this rose turned out really pretty, doing it the opposite way, going from light to dark. And then real quick, you don't have to do this, but I decided to kind of add a few more strokes in some of these roses with that same sort of light white and pink color and going outwards. I did the same for the orange one over here as well. So it's kind of just going over your strokes and adding sort of another layer in there. Again, totally optional. You don't have to do that. And then what I decided also was that these leaves over here, because it wasn't intended for that rose to be there, I wanted to bring these leaves out a little bit more so that they are showing a little bit better. So I'm just going back over them, extending them with that same leaf color. When you are done with the wreath itself, and you're going to add the lettering on it, you'll need to wait for it to completely dry. So this is actually the next day here. Mine is definitely dry, and I created a text printout that says love grows here. I created this printout in a program called Canva, and I wrote a blog post about how to do it, but you can customize your monogram, your quote. You can have whatever you want it to say. It's super fun to design different quotes. Print it out on paper and then use the graphite transfer paper to transfer your lettering over. And when I transfer the letters, sometimes it's easiest just to color the letter in, and it'll go on your canvas exactly how it's showing on the paper. I'm just using a regular pencil and I'm coloring those letters, and that gray thing that you see under there, that's called graphite paper, and whatever I'm pressing and putting pressure on, it's transferring with the graphite to the canvas itself. And so you're going to do that on all of your letters until you're all magically finished. And there's my quote design. Then I'm going to use a paint pen. This is the POSCA Paint Pen. It's a black acrylic paint pen. And I'm just going to go ahead and color my letters in. Now, you don't have to use a paint pen. You can use your standard brush and acrylic paint. You can use a Sharpie for this. I've done paintings and I've used a Sharpie for the quote, and that's fine as well. So you're just going to fill it all in until it is complete. So I was talking about the software that I used to create the quote. It's called Canva. You go to www.canva.com. It looks like it's canvas without the S. And you can specify exactly what size. So I measured the inside of the wreath. It was like 6.5 inches wide by 4 inches high. And so you put that in your measurements and then you do the text. So it's like working in Microsoft Word. You're doing you're writing your text, and then you specify the font. There's a whole bunch of pretty fonts that you can do, and then you can do your spacing. They even have some really cute graphics if you wanted to add a heart in there or some cute arrows or something else, a different quote. You can do a monogram. So that's really fun to kind of incorporate a software and have it print out, and then you get your own free printable out of it, totally customizable. And if you wanted this exact printable, if you didn't want to make your own, I do have this exact printable of the Love Grows Here text on my website. Or if you're looking at the video through the blog post itself, it is in there as well. So you'll be able to print that out and put it on your canvas. But this painting has come to its conclusion. Sign your name and show it off. I am going to sign my name with, this is not the 0 brush. I believe this is either the 10-0 or the 5-0 brush. These little tiny brushes, but that's what I'm using to sign my name with, and Mars Black. But that's it. Thanks for watching.